We are recording now.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Okay, so we were just kind of saying briefly in the last 30 seconds before we hit the button to record, we're commenting what it is that we've asked you to do for the assignment in module 4. And we were saying that it is really the most, because you're building up all the time, it is to some extent. I don't think it is difficult, but yes, it is the most complex, if you can compare what it is that you have done so far. And it is true that because it is an iterative process, right? And because in this case you're kind of thinking of, this is my module, I'm doing this, and you're just gonna go around it. But think that we're not aiming for perfection, right? So just aim for a version that in a way you want to test with somebody. So run it by somebody, come back to it. But I think that's a good idea about sharing, which is also what module 4 is about, in the case that, the more you talk about these things and the more you ask for somebody else's opinion, what it is that you're doing, possibly you find something that you hadn't thought about, or at the same time it reinforces something that you were doing. So yeah.
Yes, and the same, like something that you said, and something we now will introduce in our process soon, like in a more formal way. So not to wait until the very end to test or to beta test. Validate with someone that can be like a potential learner, a content expert that is working with you but didn't develop the unit, other learning developers or designers that are around you, particularly at the beginning, because yes, some things you have to be aware of when building, and then you don't have to redo things altogether. So then if you do one small chunk, one activity, so that's why we stop in one activity, just work on the instructions for one activity, make sure they are crystal clear, and they can be, especially because of the type of courses you both are designing, and I think also Erica, that is more for self-paced followers, let's say, not instructor-paced. So they have to really, really be clear. If not, and we'll see that in the next module that will open tomorrow, you'll get a lot of questions from your learners. And of course, in our process, we always recommend to first run as instructor-based, because you catch these questions and you can, let's say, adjust the instructions or things that didn't go as well, like for the rest of the modules. But now, yes, we are telling you the best is like to test, to see, and then that will save you time when building the next module or the next activity, plus in the future when the course is running, avoiding to have a flow of questions coming that could have been prevented if the design was well thought, in these terms.
Yeah. So it's very much, so what I like to say, just me and my metaphors. I normally go to all my food metaphors. I'm going to give you a different metaphor in this case, metaphor, but how I explain. So the idea of having these instructions very clear, it's very much the purpose of it. It's like, so because it's an online course, because you're not there all the time, because you're not looking in the face at your students, you don't know what their reaction, you don't know when they're confused and all that. So then you really need to eliminate as much as possible that possible confusion from the students, right? So it's this idea of kind of asking yourself, what does this mean? Am I being clear about this, right? And what I use with my courses in architecture, because the Faculty of Architecture, the building itself is actually it's a beautiful building, but it's just total madness, because there is 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors, the 1.5 floors, stairs this way, stairs that way. So I always say to somebody, okay, so imagine, so your course is very much like, imagine that you invite me for a meeting in architecture, and you wait for me, you wait for me at the reception, and then you have to guide me to get to the meeting room, but just by, imagine I can't see, so you're just gonna guide me so that I make it to the room on time, right? So and it's really that kind of level of detail in the same, it's like, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? So the same thing, you say, okay, take 10 steps, for 10 steps ahead, they can ride, go up the stairs and this and that. Pretty much, I think that's what it is when it comes to kind of instructions. You might as well, so it's better to, if you're gonna, what's the expression in English? If you're gonna err on the side of, so be too cautious and give too much detail, it's better than actually leave us too much to, open or so much kind of that I'm not sure what exactly you're asking me to do. So in the case of an assessment, for example, think of directly what is the outcome. So what is that outcome? Is that a piece of writing? Is it a poster? Is it a photograph? Is it a whatever it is? Then that has to be very, very clear, and then just go towards that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you didn't say the metaphor.
No, it wasn't a metaphor. It was
no, but I thought you were gonna do the I was expecting that metaphor.
I'll tell you my metaphor. The soup. It's just because I've been working with a new course last week, and I've gone into cheese all the time. So it's cheese tasting. So the idea that what are we doing? Did we do cheese tasting here before?
No.
So it's like, imagine that I think food metaphors are amazing for actually designing a course. So in this case, I was trying to figure out, so we were talking about the big question and the smaller questions, what it is I do. And I said to them, okay, so imagine that we are all together going to a cheese tasting session. And I chose cheese because we are at the university, so we can talk about alcohol. But I would have gone for a wine tasting or beer tasting. It's also very doable. So the way, have you ever done a cheese tasting session or wine tasting or beer, one of these big things? There's actually quite a big group. And then there's somebody who welcomes you to the session first, right? Introduces you. Hello, how's everybody? My name is so-and-so. This is what we're going to do. I'm so happy to be here. But yeah, today I'm going to bring you through a journey of the cheeses in Europe, for example, right? So there you go. So the first cheese is going to be a Spanish cheese, for example, right? So you don't just get the cheese and you eat the cheese and off you go. No, there's kind of this whole preparation. So what you have in front of you is a piece of manchego cheese, and I tell you a little bit of the story of manchego cheese and what it is made of and whatever it is that I think of, and then you go and you taste the cheese. And sometimes you have a little card when you can give it a mark, as in is it tasty, is it soft, is it hard, whatever. So you kind of, that's kind of a way of helping your digestion. If you've been there with somebody, you just walk and so you turn to your partner and say, so what do you think of this cheese? Is it lovely? Is it not lovely? And then you have a glass of water to clean your palate, so you can have a piece of bread, and then you start again, and that comes the next cheese, is a French cheese, and blah, blah, blah. So pretty much, if you think about it, that's what it is, because every cheese is your chunk of content, is what you want learners to actually, digest. So you're going to take a piece of cheese, and you don't go and eat the whole cheese in the one go. No, you're going to eat little pieces of cheese, right? So let me see, I didn't get this right, I'm going to taste it again. So you grab another piece of cheese and you just kind of go.
Yeah.
So pretty much I think that's what it is. So you can use the soup metaphor, is exactly the same thing. If somebody puts a bowl of soup in front of you, you don't just grab the soup and then go wow and eat it all in one go. No, you have your spoon and then you just take and you take one spoonful, you enjoy it. That's really nice. And let's go another one until there's no more soup, right? So pretty much that's kind of the idea. And somebody was asking me, well, how do I do this? Okay, start by identifying your pieces of cheese. Your course is about cheese. So what pieces of cheese are we going to be tasting in this course? Okay, so, so that's the idea. For some reason, that's the first thing. It's like, it's the difficulty into kind of breaking the big content into kind of smaller content, and then smaller chunks, and then smaller chunks.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps, but I think it.
Yeah, no, and if we think of the things that we have asked you already to do, so you started first, we did the reflection on the OLE, but then you have your learning objectives plus the big questions. So those set a bit like how, or they started the process of thinking how to break that content into smaller chunks, because you might think, okay, I will cover learning objective 1, maybe one module, or learning objective 1 will be throughout the modules, because we have, for example, if you look at our syllabus, there is one learning objective that always accompanies all the content in the modules, which is applying the process, because it's like a big one.
Yeah.
And then in the next activity, so in module 3, you have reflected on learning elements that will be part of one of those chunks. Yeah, and then Roberta is, partly related to what we discussed and your question in the discussion board. Now, how that chunk make sense for the learner. So you don't want to overwhelm them. Maybe you are covering more than one, or maybe you are covering it extensively. So you have to make decisions on what's the best resource to an activity, accompanying an activity that will help them to develop certain skills or to understand certain concepts, right? So again, you have a small chunk, don't make it bigger again, just keep it the focus on that. And of course, decisions like from the design point of view have to be made there, right? And again, now in this module 4, we ask you to dive into one of those learning elements in particular. So for you to see like how we are like just bringing it to the detail.
But I have a question about the assignment that we are working on, because there are different elements. It's not, at least from what I understood, is that we write explicitly our module with, okay, developing one of the main piece of assessment we have there, but it's all the parts of the module. So to really be concrete, right, in writing as we would write a module from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Am I correct, right?
Yeah.
You partly did that already, so that's why it's coming.
Yeah, but
from
now I'm
3.
getting much more in details, because I'm also based on your questions, and your feedback, then how to think a bit more from the learner perspective, and how to really bring the learners by hand to do what I want them to do, and then not to overcomplicate the things. But also I had this issue that was also my question to you, that in the blueprint I was doing each section, so the learning element, I saw it as made of different learning activities, and it was not one learning activity and so on. It was a learning element, and the learning elements is a series of activities. It can be listen to something, reading, or I don't know, whatever, and then also a task, an assignment. But then looking what the other they did differently, they did one element was one activity. And for me, I was, okay, each element belonged to a learning objective, and I want to reach that objective in that element. But then maybe for this reason, I put too many things in one chunk.
So yeah, my feeling was that you have more than one chunk mix there.
Yeah, okay. Now, I mean, I will try to be, I don't know, I try to simplify a bit while doing it. But still, I'm not sure. So I'm curious then to see what you think about.
It's in a way, think about, for me, whether you call it a learning activity or a learning element, it doesn't really make much difference, right? For me, it's kind of the semantics. But what I would invite you to do, guys, is, so for each, it's always like, so what do you want, what do you want me to get out of this particular activity learning? I'm going to call them chunks. So of this particular chunk, what is it that you want me to get out as a learner? What is the bit what's the outcome that you want me to have, right? So in order to get to that outcome, you're going to ask me to, you don't always have to ask me to do something, as in do. In a way, we kind of get a bit obsessed, not obsessed, but it's the normal thing. It's like, because we want an engaging course, so it's like, so now you do this, and now you do this, and now you do that. And no, it's just like, try and balance this. Yes, you can do something, but there's elements that you can let the learner be totally passive. They don't have to be doing something all the time. But what you need to kind of design really nice is that what it is. So each of these steps, what is the little thing that I get Is it I understood this idea or I'm able to do this? So how do you weave those different steps in order to get to that particular outcome? So you can think of that as a whole module, or you can think about, so each small chunk in a way it's always like, why are you asking me to do this? What's the particular outcome that I'm gonna get out of it? Because that's what it is that's gonna make it clear for me. And that is like, it's like if you a metaphor. Imagine that you're on a pilgrimage, you're going all the way to Santiago de Compostela. So we're walking towards Santiago, right? So you've got the different stages. So you're walking from the Pyrenees to the next bit and the next bit. So you've got all this signposting, and you've got all this, the first, there's like a sign you made it to kilometer 20, for example, right? So if I leave from the Pyrenees and my first object is to make it to this place, which is 20 kilometers away, that's the outcome. I made it by 20 kilometers away, but on the way, I've been going up the mountain, down the mountain, crossing the river, whatever it is, having a glass of wine along the way. I stop to have my brocha gas,
My bocadillo.
and then I make it to the 20-kilometer mark. So that's my outcome. See what I mean? So, but it's what I say to you guys. It's not. Nobody gets. So if I look back, I'm not saying that I designed wonderful courses, because all courses are different. But if I look back to the first course that I ever designed a long time ago, that was a very, very different course. So it's a way. So you tell the stories in different ways. You just constantly kind of getting better, like going on a bicycle. The more you cycle, the better you get at it, like anything else. So that's what I was saying to you. I said, don't try to go for perfection, but try and design the path, or design a story for your learners when you have a very clear outcome. I said, this is what I want you guys to get out of this journey.
Yeah. And I think of the storyboard in like two ways. One, that you are thinking and designing for your learners. So from the learner perspective, should be crystal clear. But it's also a resource that you use in a team. So again, if it's for validating with other people, or for sharing with others, because sometimes you are building a course and you are not the only one designing, so more than one person might be using it. So it has to be clear, and like the rules should be and apply for everybody more or less in the same way. So how do you not only refer to things, let's say just for semantics, but for really clarifying this idea of the small chunks and how you work with those, how learning objectives are covered. That's why we ask, it's not something written in stone, but we asked first for the learning objectives that were covered in module 3. And some of you, I ask, you are referring to this learning objective or to this other learning objective, because again, I'm reviewing it as if I'm like co-designing with you, right? So I was more like in that humor, let's say, when reviewing, I was like, oh yes, but we are designing for this learning objective. I'm not sure. So that's why I was double checking with some of you if that was the one that you were designing for. And of course, going back to the discussion we had 2 weeks ago, I think was like, how many learning objectives do I need one learning objective per activity or not? So again, since I've seen like new learning objectives coming up, but I could relate them to a main learning objective that you already stated. So again, as a co-designer with you, so I was in that mindset, let's say, like, oh yes, are we? And then I started not to understand sometimes the path that you were building. So then that's when the comments came in, like, oh yes, well, I'm not completely sure. It's not that I agree. I mean, it's different ways, but the level of complexity was too big for me to understand, like on one go, on one reading, let's say.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions?
Morten, did you do your assignment already?
Yes.
I feel like in school. Did you do your assignment?
Yeah, I have uploaded it. But I agree with you totally that it has taken a lot of time. And I think especially writing, I think you called it the glue text.
Yeah.
And that is like the learning journey you have in your head is not necessarily the same as the one I have in my Word document. So yeah, designing and explaining why you're going to go to the next step, because now you have done the previous step, it just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you have a good point that the first time that you run a course, do it with a lot of interaction, because then you
Yeah.
can sort of find out where to elaborate a little bit on the details and the information of why you're doing this. And
Yeah,
but I
exactly.
do have a couple of questions. When we did the storyboard in assignment 3, you asked us to do some different activities. But when do you think about, do I actually have the technology that is fit for that particular activity?
Mhm.
Is that just something that you have in the back of your head, or you sometimes you can design an activity and you just find out that, oh, that's just not fit for an online environment. That might be fit for an on-site environment, but not online, because we don't have the technology, or
Yeah.
we don't have a license, or whatever. So what's your take on that?
Can I go first?
Yeah, it's a super good question.
It's a very, very
And
good
something,
question.
Yeah, once in a while we discuss within the team, like, how do you design? You design for the technology?
So it is true that we will always think, you're just gonna think of the pedagogy and not. So you design pedagogically, and then the technology will support your design, and you don't design to support the technology. See what I mean? So, but at the same time, because in our case we are working with edX all the time, we know very well what we can do in edX and what we cannot do in edX, right? It is true that at the same time, it depends on many things. Right? We have a high volume of courses. You see who is really, so which of your course teams are really committed to do something special, or which course teams want just to produce a course, an online course that's going to run. So the possibility is there, and we have done it in the past, that if you have like an idea, from a pedagogical point of view what it is that you want to do, and that technology is not necessarily with edX. So then there is room for the instructional designer and his team to actually work with you in order to produce what it is that you want to create. So create that technology that's going to help you in your particular case, but for your particular course, but also thinking that once that is created, everybody else will be able to kind of use it as we go along. So we've done that in a way that's been the case of using a sketch drive, for example, as a visual board. But at the same time, I know perfectly well that it's perfectly fine, because I've done it in a way. I said, create a course a great course where the use of technology is just totally minimal. See what I mean? So it's about telling a good story, and for not telling that good story, you don't necessarily need the technology to be there. So, but it is true. So the technology, beforehand, it is true. What I would say to you is, like, if you're designing an online course, you design an online course, and you cannot think, and this is partly a huge problem that we have during COVID. Remember, because everybody was used to be teaching, face to face, and all of a sudden they want to do exactly the same thing, but online. And of course, that's not possible. Well, it's not possible all the time. So the idea is always to kind of think, I'm designing something online, so what's going to be the main difference online? Okay, so I don't see my students, I don't have them in front of me, but I need to, for me, so then that means that the teaching voice and that clue text is what's going to be there in order to replace me. But that's me, the teacher. I don't need the technology for that. It is true that there's some fancy things will give you a bit of more engagement or interactivity with the content that maybe it's like super duper. But the thing is, like, is that absolutely necessary? So do you need the latest technology in order to have a very good course?
Yeah, so again, our approach, as we said, so it's more from the pedagogical point of view, and what we receive is requests of people that sometimes use already a tool. For example, with Miro in the industrial design or architecture, they use it a lot. So when they come in for a course development, they want to use the same tool. That takes some time no, to get the license or to get it in place, to check GDPR, etc. Things are allowed. Sometimes core teams don't really care about that and want to use it anyway, which is not the advice we give, of course. But what we prioritize is what's the learning objective and why are you going to use the technology? Because then it's not that, oh, we have this tool, we should use it. So then we force the content and the skills we want to our learners to practice to the technology. So our approach is the other way. Let's say we have the activity or we have something sketched and we see if there is any tool. Maybe the instructors with their experience, they already bring what they have in campus, or again, SketchUp is a tool that came more from our side, which is a visual tool that now we don't use here, so we switched to Miro. In the past, we used to use it. For several reasons we stopped, but a couple of years ago. But again, that's the approach. So then what do we want to do? Then there is some technology available. Another thing is like, for example, with Miro, that you were fine using it, but it could be that a user, a learner like you, comes in and said, no, I don't agree because it requires to create an account. Miro is not the case, actually. But another tool, it requires to create an account, and I don't want to create an account, even if it's for free, because it will collect my data, etc., etc. And then, as instructors, we have to give an option to, so the option is like to opt out and to give another way or to provide an alternative to submit the assignments, for example. I don't remember if it happens to us many times, but now we even have that in our, or it's the good practice, in the course description. So in the about page, we say if a tool is going to be used, or that's a recommendation we give to our lecturers. In the case...
Sorry.
No, in the case, again, that a learner says, I don't want to use that tool because X and X, and they have like a valid reason, fine, and then we find an alternative for that. So again, it could have been done differently. We decided to use the tool, but it's not because of the tool. The tool facilitates, let's say, the learning environment.
But I was thinking, I mean, in certain cases, you have the constraint of what is available to you, because sometimes you can't choose the resource, I mean, the platform, for instance, and then maybe depends on the organization. You have that one that has certain tools available and nothing else.
Yeah.
So when at some point when you design, you need to confront yourself with that part also. Yeah. Be not at the beginning you dream big, but at some point I think you're gonna crush with what you can do or not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but this is it. So, and the other thing you need to think about is like, again, so where are your learners? Who are they? What access to technology do they have in a you know, and I don't need to even say to you, you know, whatever certain areas in Africa, it's not Africa. If you go, there are many areas in Europe, you know, in my own country, in Spain, it's the middle of a rural area when, you know, your connection to the internet is very, very, very tiny. So if because of the technology you're not going to be able to take a course, then it's not worth using the technology.
Exactly.
See? And so that's in a way like we because we are used to designing for an open world, in a sense that we're not designing just for campus students. I mean, we had the issue of even deciding, remember at some stage designing on the reading list of, you know, so you've got extra material for your students. Yeah, you can download this from the library, as in the library. If you're a campus student, you have access to the library. Hey, I'm outside. I don't have access to the library, so I can't read all this stuff. So from that point, you start saying, actually, if you're going to give me a reading list, it has to be something that is openly accessible to anyone and everyone, and not just me, because I've got the privilege to, you know, work on this campus and access the library on this campus. See, so that's the whole thing. What do you think, Morten? Sorry, that's a big speech from our side.
What do I think of what? Sorry.
This idea of the technology thing. So.
Yeah, well, obviously, I think, I mean, you can, you may have a like a wish that you want to create this really cool learning activity, but then you think about, okay, I need, let's say it's a coding assignment. So I wanted to go for a Jupyter Notebook. But that might be technology number 5 I'm introducing in this course.
Yeah.
So what is the cognitive load that I put on myself and my learners? Because maybe I'm used to use Jupyter Notebook, but my learners are not.
Yeah.
And so I believe it's a very much an iterative process. You're designing your learning activities, thinking about, well, can I actually perform that learning activity online or not? And then maybe I have to slightly redefine the learning activity because I know that I have a tool that is that most people know how to use.
Yeah, so, but then in that case, what do you do? Because you have the chance of actually creating a guide for your learners how to use Jupyter Books, right? Or you can request knowledge of Jupyter Books as a prerequisite. So if you want to take this course, you have to have experience using Jupyter Books. See what I mean? So, but it is true. It's a very good point. It's like if you so that goes as in always. You're gonna use if you can just keep it simple. So if it's gonna take me longer to learn to use this particular technology in order to, so I've put all my time into learning a technology, and I kind of you're taking me away from learning the whatever it is content that I need to learn. Then kind of the question we have to ask ourselves is it worth this in a way? So yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
And but you mentioned that it was the 5th technology that you introduced. So you want to have like 5 different tools.
No, that was just an example.
Okay. No.
Yeah, because I'm very much in favor of not introducing too many tools.
Yeah.
And I'm also in favor of, I'd rather go for a simple one that has just a very few features than the latest one that has so many features that nobody knows how to use. So, yeah.
Okay, so moving along slightly, let me ask you then, what do you guys think about reusing? So imagine you already have your storyboard, but in a way, but you're reusing material that has been created by somebody else. So what's your take on that? Are you happy doing that? Is it you think, oh great, I don't need to kind of start from scratch because this resource here is super nice and I can use it? Or are you more leaning towards the side where I kind of like to create things myself?
Personally, I like it. Especially, I like to start with something is there, and then you can change it. So I think it helps you if you find something you like. But of course, you will never like something completely one-to-one. So then naturally you change it. But I'm all about reuse, especially why do the same things twice if somebody else already did it. So I'm really happy to use other ideas, inspirations. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree with that. And especially in this process, I know that you have so many years of experience designing online courses, and it's quite new to us at DTU. So why shouldn't I stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from your experiences? And then I can tweak it a little bit so it fits my public. So, I've also, I think that the resource that you provided from Delft explaining the Creative Commons, the 6 different licenses, that were quite useful for me because there was something about the shareable thing that I didn't really understand reading the original website. So the explanation that was provided in that PDF that was the link to was really good and really helpful.
Well, exactly. Happy that happy that you found it useful. So that's great. For me, I am very much in love with Creative Commons licenses. I don't know if you haven't realized because you haven't met me. but
today is your opportunity.
I can see that. I can see that on your laptop.
Well, yeah, exactly. You have.
The first thing I do is put the Creative Commons license in there. Yeah, I've got more in different colors. I can give you one if you want. No, I just think that as teachers or as educators, and for me there's two things. This idea of telling stories. We go through life telling stories. So the idea that you're teaching somebody, you're telling a story, but you're sharing something. So imagine what was education like, time and time ago, when we didn't have computers, we didn't have books, it's just kind of somebody talking, somebody having a dialogue with you, right? So, but it's this idea of kind of sharing. So for me, education is very much sharing. The fact that we've got the internet has made it possible to share beyond belief. So of course, this idea of so I find it is true. So Roberta, you just mentioned it. How many times we go to the internet and we Google something because we're looking for inspiration, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. It's the same quote that I gave you in the course where it says, well, as a teacher, I'm looking for something, I can't find it. Okay, so I create it and I share it because then somebody else will use it, right? So I'm not saying that we need to share absolutely everything, because obviously there's things that you don't need to share. But when it comes to what's educational resources, the fact that you can share them, and you've got something like the internet that gives you this fabulous scope in order to share. It's like, so for me, Creative Commons licenses is this idea. So this is my resource. I have a copyright, the university has the copyright, but I don't mind you using it, right? Yeah. I don't mind you using it. So the idea of using this license is that I'm going to tell you exactly how I would like you to use it, what kind of permissions I give you to do. So that's what I'm saying, that it's just phenomenal in my opinion, right? Yeah. So because it's also go.
I have a question about the licenses, but maybe finish what you were saying, then I'm going to ask my question.
No, it's the same thing. So then if you find something on the internet that not everything on the internet you can just grab and put it in your course. So if it has attached the XCC license, then you know exactly how you can use that, and you don't have to go and find for contact details of whoever is the copyright owner. Can I use this? Can I not use? Which it could take weeks, months, a year, so you maybe never hear of this person. So in this idea of to help reuse, I created this. You can use it. This is how you wanted to use it. You don't have to ask me. The permission is already there.
It's clear.
And it's on the way around. So I'm looking for something. I see, can I use this? Yes, there's a WCC license on it. I know exactly how I can use it. And I don't need to go look for permission. Yeah. Roberta.
Yeah, the small task we had to create the badge. No?
I was going to ask you.
So, in the badge, then there was already a license attached. So if you click on it, there is one. But because I use a picture on the back of this, and I took it from We Like Sharing, and then there was the license, how to use this image. So I took the information there and I copied in the comments of the badge. But then, I don't know, should we do it like that? Or because... No. How to do that? Because I couldn't change the license of the badge itself, but still this image I wanted to put.
In that case, you're absolutely right. So because we are using Brian's remixer, and Brian's remixer does not, so all his remixes, it's about the drawings that he creates, the diagrams that he creates, and then you can change the diagram. So he is a creator, you adapt his work. It is true that in the case of any of these remixes that you can bring in a picture, he doesn't have it automated in order, but you're absolutely right that photo that you used in your badge should have been attributed. See what I mean?
So just a comment in the future.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So for that particular one, if you, so the badge at the moment is in a private gallery, but if you were to use that badge yourself somewhere, then you would need to kind of add the attribution. You would need to say that the photograph that you used actually belongs to blah blah blah. This is where you can find this.
Yeah. So now I add it in the comments, so you can see.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not properly made. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Just.
But then it is true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, and it's an important topic and something that now you are building your own courses, but in our experience and when you work with other people say, oh, yes. And then when it comes to reusing and attributing correctly, it's so hard to get people doing it correctly or at least attempting to. No, because I say, oh, but I found it. Where? In Google. Like, well,
no, exactly.
But no, was it open? It's something that can be reused, can be adapted. So that's another thing. So it has a CC license, but if it's not possible to adapt the image, for example, to use it even in a background and blur it, you are readapting, let's say, the image. Exactly, you are adjusting, changing. So you have to check that the license allows you to do, right? And we see now people are more aware, but it doesn't mean that they from the beginning do it correctly. No, and correct me if I'm saying things that are not in place, but we see now, so we got a couple of requests of people saying, hey, that's mine, you cannot use it.
Exactly.
And then, of course, we are in university context, so the university is the one that is going to pay, but we should do it correctly from the beginning to avoid these situations, these circumstances, and more even like if you are an individual person, of course, we have an organization behind, but if you're an individual person doing something, so more than your case also, you have the university, but if you decide to go, entrepreneur, and I do my course because of I want to educate the world, and then that happens, you are, infringing like some rules, so there's going to be consequences. So that's also, like in concrete terms, why it's important as well, apart from like really recognizing not the work of another person.
Yeah.
That was really open for sharing, but in certain terms and conditions.
Even if it is just a small, tiny change, it needs to be attributed in a sense. So I invite you to look at, if you probably haven't clicked, but in module 4, the discussion about open is illustrated with the photograph of Mickey Mouse going, why won't nobody share, right? So that's an adaptation of the original. If you click on the original, you will see what the original and what the change is. So I'll let you be curious about that. But even if it is kind of a small change, you need to. So in this case, I don't claim attribution because it's such a small. I just changed a little something, but it is just part. So the whole what I invite you to do is yes, there's this idea one because it's on the internet. That doesn't mean that we can use it. Just grab it, put in our course. That is not the correct thing to do. So you need to look for a Creative Commons license. And the same way, if you decide to share something, so if an element of your course doesn't have to be the whole course, but if an element of the course of your course is going to be put online, that you make sure that other people can reuse it as well. And that's, for example, by giving your materials a Creative Commons license. Yeah. Okay. What else? We briefly say, so in moving now tomorrow on to module 5.
Yes.
For you to know, is this what we said that they don't have to do assignments?
Yeah. Yeah, true. We thought at this point we were going to clarify.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we have module 5 and module 6 coming. And for both of the topics, well, you already know because it's in the syllabus. So we have like communicating with your course and community management, let's say. In the module 5 and module 6, we have the quality assurance aspect and how to evaluate your course. Even though in this case, I think for both of you, both units are valid. So what we found also explaining like the reason, like from one run to the other. So we decided to adjust things because sometimes was not, both of them didn't have like that much relevance for the people that were taking this course. So in this case, we decided to test and try out a grading schema that is different, which is you can opt to do one of them. So you can do module 5 or module 6. Or you can do both if you want. So we are going to give feedback to all your submissions. But in this case, for the grading that matters, so your grading will be based only in one. So the system will take only one of them.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you tick both, so it will count. If you tick on module 5 because you have submitted, then it will take that into account. But again, if you decide to do both, so we are more than happy to give feedback on both submissions. But again, these are designers, decisions. And again, now from experience of what we found, and Roberta, again, like the case that you found now that you have a lot of activities within one module. So we also found that the complexity of the activity that you are now tackling, module 4 and module 3, it took a lot of thinking that people that were really designing their courses, they wanted to go back and like do things again, draft things again, and for us has more value to stop there. And the other part is not that doesn't, it does, but since you are not there yet, if you are not running the course at the moment, you can always pick up the plan and all the templates and things that we provide there later, right? So yes, that's the reason. But again, we also find this a struggle, and we also evaluate every run to see how we can improve, not only from the design point of view, because for us, like, was beautiful how it was, but then we realized we were asking too much from course participants, right? Yes, that's lesson learned.
For you also to know that in module 6, which is about evaluation, we'll have our lovely colleague Clelia Paralupi, who was also kind of present in the webinar. Remember, Morten? Well, you both were at the webinar that we gave, right? So Clelia,
I know her. Yes.
Oh, she's an awful person. Oof, gosh, yeah. Anyway, so she kindly volunteered to kind of be part of the fund. So at least I think she's also coming to the. Is she coming to the consultation now?
Yes, she's coming.
Yes, she's
so not next week, but the week after. On the 24th.
And she will also be commenting on. So if you actually choose to do, I'm not making you do the assignment 6 and not do it in. Not to the 5. To the step. But anyway, but Clelia will also be commenting on the assignment of module 6, which is kind of the evaluation thing. So that'd be great.
Yeah. And again, as designers, I think also in your case, so every step is important, but it's like sometimes like a matter of prioritizing. So again, if you really are stuck in assignment 3 and assignment 4 and you want to put more time there, we also understand that you prefer to tackle those. Because again, the idea and the aim, or one of the aims of this course, is that you have the full experience, but that you really walk out like with the course, like design, I know, like the sketch of the design, let's say.
At least your ideas a bit more clear than what you had at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
is the deadline the same for both assignments if you want to do them, or?
I think we said like weekly again, but
we can.
But again, since it's flexible, yes, I can check now.
But you are going to open both modules.
That's a good question. Now I was thinking
today.
We were still going to open module. So tomorrow module 5 and then the following module 6. Do you want us to open the 2 modules at the same time?
Maybe, since we have to choose, but.
Yeah, that was, I think while I was talking, I was, they won't know what they have to do.
Okay, so I mean, we can. Yeah, we probably can. So that's very true. So that means that you can take a look at what it is that needs to be done and then decide which one you want to. I mean, it's nice to do the 2 of them. No, you choose. It's okay.
No, even like in our experience, when we train course teams, including teaching assistants, now we have the training all together. No, the BAM. It's called BAM training because it's building and moderating extension school courses, which contains the technical parts of how to build in the platform plus the community management part. And until now, we were doing it all together. and for you, Morten, like explaining like how now we decided to split them again because we realized that they were taking the course like at the very early stage of the design, let's say in the storyboard, and then they forget everything about community management. So then when the runtime comes, so after, let's say, 5 months that they have started designing, or more, let's say, so at least 5 months, they don't remember anything. So they have to do it all over again. So that's also a bit of the reason like why we say, oh, well, yes, of course, we want to introduce our knowledge of community management, but yes, it can be doing differently, right?
Yeah. Okay.
One last question for me then. When you assist content experts in designing a course, are you involved in creating all the storyboards, or are you just involved in one and then they sort of know how to do it themselves?
Both.
That's a good question again. Yeah, it's both ways. It depends on the course team, and it depends like how experienced they are. You always start kind of at least with one module that you design together. Then you send them away to design the other ones, but you need to hover all the time and just come in with input all the time. So it's very, I think.
So I had cases that I sat with them. It was COVID time, so online every Thursday, and we built it together. So they came with ideas, we were shaping, doing, sometimes we did breakout rooms, so we had this like well, we disconnect for half an hour, you know, and then when we are back, so we did like, we met for 2 to 3 hours every Thursday, and I did that, and also in person, and I did in person, but more scattered. But this one was every week because they wanted to develop in certain time, so every week we did. But if not, most of the cases is more as they said. You do one model one with them, then they go do the homework, and then they share with you. Maybe in in-person meetings, sometimes it's sharing the file, or you go to the file like everyone and then and give feedback there.
It depends very much on again, repeating myself, but it depends on the story you're telling. So some course teams like designing like a very set structure for each module. So they know very much exactly how the structure of the module is. So then it it's about replicating exactly the same structure module. So you work with the idea that, you know, the learners are very familiar with the structure they see in the first module, and then that idea of familiarity helps them actually to say, okay, I know what is coming now, which is in a way what we've done with this particular course with DTOC. If you see the structure it's replicated the same structure module. You have, you know, other kinds of stories that you're telling when you cannot really go for something completely different from module, depending on what it is that you ask them to do. And you play with that element of surprise at the same time in order to kind of keep them more engaged because they don't know what's coming next, in a way. So it kind of works both ways.
Yeah, and again, we try to be flexible in that sense because also some course teams really like independence. So we also don't want them to feel like we are the authority coming and doing and saying. So they want to do fine, then we can, because you know how it is now with content experts. Of course, they are the experts, but we also have something to say. So in that negotiation, you have a bit to taste the waters now to say, okay, yeah, well.
Because what you don't want to happen is that they also kind of think, we're going to do this, and that. And then you don't want to come at the end and say, actually, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. No, that's not going to work. You know, so the idea of, even if they're working independently, the idea of kind of having that communication, that constant communication through the whole process with your course team, I think it's very, very important. Yeah. Okay. So shall we say our goodbyes then?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
If you have any questions, put them on the forum
I'll
or
stop there.
catch us, send an email, whatever. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.